Hi, I'm Amanda Morale with interest.co.nz, and I'm here today with Michael Chamberlain. This is another one of our double shot interviews where we get a chance to interview CEOs and heads of various sectors. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you.
Now, you have the distinction of having one of the lowest, or what you've described as the cheapest KiwiSaver funds by fee on the market. How can you be so sure of that, given the controversy over fees these days and sort of the different reporting mechanisms and whatnot?
We go through the investment statements of all of our competitors to make sure we understand their fees, and we set our fees based on cost recovery as opposed to profit. And on a cost recovery basis, we know our fees are low. And when we compare them to other providers, the investment statements all indicate that ours are low. If you go to the Retirement Commissioner's website and do the analysis on that, it always shows that Superlife is very low.
Yeah.
Very competitive.
We did our own calculations and tried to factor in hidden fees, not so hidden fees, and you came out looking pretty good. In three of the categories, you were one of the least expensive. That was in our moderate funds, balanced, growth and aggressive. The interesting thing about the fees on the aggressive funds was that yours were something in the order of 1.5 percentage points below the most expensive growth fund, which I thought was quite interesting. The industry rationale is that growth funds are inherently expensive to manage. You've challenged that idea. Why is that?
It doesn't. At the end of the day, if you're making decisions on investments, you need intelligent people. And intelligent people get paid the same whether they're making decisions on fixed interest or whether they're making decisions on shares. Yeah. So you don't need to charge more. Yeah. It's just the industry allows you to charge more, and so some providers do.
Yeah.
But all of the surveys around the world show that the difference between the best performer and the lowest performer is fees. And so Superlife's philosophy is to always keep our fees as low as possible without compromising security.
What about this argument that it requires a bit more research, analysis, site visits? I was speaking with one of the high performer fund managers, and they suggested they were going out to Australia to do, all this market analysis. It was required to have that level of assurance that comes with that kind of exposure to a growth fund. Is that not necessary or how are you able to keep the cost down?
That information, that research has to be done. As the biggest risk to any investor is the risk of fraud. Yeah. And therefore you have to satisfy yourself that the information that companies give you are not fraudulent. And you can only do that by verifying data firsthand. Yeah. But the philosophy of Superlife is to use large managers, and large managers have economies of scale, and we pass that economies of scale on to our members.
And you've mentioned also that overseas funds are quite a markup in fees as well, create quite a markup in fees. How are you able to manage that?
Again, we use our negotiating power to ensure that we don't pay fees where the managers don't add value. Yeah.
I'm interested to hear your thoughts about the Savings Working Group idea that we should have a universal KiwiSaver fund that's a default fund that has low fees and is predominantly geared towards fixed interest. What do you think about that?
Well, to the extent that the Savings Working Group have said we should have a universal fund, what they've really said is that we should have Superlife, and Superlife should be the fund, because that's effectively what they've recommended. And that comes down to your philosophy. Philosophically, I think it would be wrong for the government to legislate for one provider. It's effectively creating property rights and giving taxpayers money to one commercial body. And so while that commercial body would be Superlife or would look like Superlife, it's just fundamentally wrong.
Pre-KiwiSaver, you said that you had 2/3 of the market for superannuation funds?
No, pre-KiwiSaver, we were the second or the third largest superannuation provider for employees in the marketplace.
I'm interested to know, with employees who have that option of going with their work provider or going into a KiwiSaver fund, and they're trying to sort of plot their way through that, what any advice for them as well, trying to figure that one out?
It comes down to the rules of the employer. So there are some employers that allow you to reduce the contributions that you pay to their scheme and pay them to KiwiSaver, in which case you should do both. Other employers say it's either or, in which case it's whichever one has the higher contributions, taking into account that the government subsidises KiwiSaver as well.
Yeah.
And so it's the employers and the government's contribution under KiwiSaver versus the employer's contribution under a normal scheme.
Do employees have any sort of empowerment at all if they're locked into a super scheme that is actually doing notoriously poor?
Not if
by
it's an
performance?
employer scheme,
Yeah.
because if it's an employer scheme and you want to pick up an employer contribution,
Yeah.
then you've got to comply with the rules that are set by the employer.
Okay. All right. Well, you have some mixed or some interesting ideas about whether KiwiSaver is actually a good thing or a bad thing. At the moment, it's what we've got. And would you advise somebody to go into a KiwiSaver scheme, or maybe park their money in a term deposit and be very disciplined about saving for their future?
Because we have KiwiSaver, and because there is government money, taxpayer money, which is effectively free money,
Yeah.
then you would be silly not to go into KiwiSaver while we have KiwiSaver. The issue is whether KiwiSaver is a good thing or a bad thing for New Zealand.
What do you think?
New Zealand didn't have a savings problem, still doesn't have a savings problem, and KiwiSaver was a bad idea.
That's kind of heretical given the industry mantra that go KiwiSaver these days.
The industry generally makes decisions that benefit the industry.
So you would concur with Bruce Shepard's and the like that this is a bit of a subsidization for the fund management sector then?
It's a complete subsidisation for the industry.
So what should a skeptical Kiwi do who wants to save for their retirement?
Well, at present they should save in KiwiSaver. And they should save in Superlife KiwiSaver because of the low fees and the philosophy of Superlife not to gouge its members.
Right. And you would maintain that there's a lot of gouging going on in the industry?
If you look at the fees that, you mentioned that the most expensive growth fund is 1.55% higher than our fees.
That's what we calculated.
Effectively, that's 1.55% of assets,
Yeah.
And that's a material amount of money.
Yeah.
And that can only be gouging by anybody's imagination.
Just addressing the performance benchmarks for a moment, that's also a bit of a misleading indicator for people to judge how well their fund is doing. Is that right, in terms of the volatility and the point-to-point calculations that are made?
Oh, well, currently there is no reliable performance data in the marketplace. The surveys that are available are gross of tax and incomplete. And so to rely on any gross of tax survey when the market requires you to pay tax means that you're going to make poor decisions based on the survey.
Yeah.
When you are, from a theoretical point of view, if you are saving on a regular basis, it is better to save into a volatile fund than to save into a fund that is not volatile. You'll end up with more wealth at the end of the day. It's the old dollar cost averaging theory. And so people who are saving should be saving in a reasonably aggressive fund if they've got 10, 15, 20 years to go.
Yeah.
Because the money they put in today is a small part of their total wealth.
Yeah, we have large numbers of people still in a default fund, I think, because just a lack of education about the nature of the funds and how they work and whatnot. Is that something that you would encourage people to take a closer look at? And
everybody should make a conscious decision about their investment strategy. But we have to recognise that 80% of the population either can't or more likely are not interested in taking an active decision. And that's just a challenge for the industry and a challenge for the government.
Yeah. I'm Amanda Morrell with interest.co.nz, and this has been a double shot interview with Michael Chamberlain with Superlife. Michael, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.